Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Random Thoughts of a DM. I am your humble DM, Tim, and today I'd like to talk to you about something that happened in a recent game that I ran. For a basic context, this was a game that was run online. We had 7 players and 2 DMs. I was in charge of running the combat encounters, and the other DM was in charge of running the social encounters. The basic plot was that there was an evil vampire who had been attacking towns with different creatures. One place was being attacked by zombies, one place was being attacked by vampire spawn, another one was being attacked by werewolves. And in all of these attacks, a smith or a what's the word I'm looking for? Not an artillerist, alchemist, artificer. A artificer had been taken or attempted to be taken from each of these locations, and so the adventurers had been tasked to track down this evil vampire queen and find out what she was doing and stop her in her evil plans. I won't go into it too much, but I'll post the link when it is available. Anyway, for this adventure, one thing that was asked of the players at the beginning of the game, when going through session 0, was, what is an enemy that you would like to face in this adventure? Just to give them an idea, or to give them something so that, their expectations are met, but also to give us, as the DMs, some ideas as to what we might throw at them. And one person said that they wanted to fight a purple worm. One person said they wanted to fight something with lots of eyes, aka a beholder. One person said a death knight. One person said a false Hydra. One person said anything that wasn't an aboleth, and 2 of the players suggested something from their backgrounds, something that someone had met. Like, the one person was questing to get vengeance on their for their family. So this person they might encounter might be someone from their past, basically. And so I took that information, and the adventure was not meant to last that long, and I just thought to myself, wouldn't it be awesome if, since I am the dndblender guy and I love blending things together, why don't I just mix all of these creatures into one mega encounter for them to deal with? And so that is what I ended up doing, and in the process I ended up creating the purple worm Hydra beholder ridden by a death knight. And it got the reaction that I was hoping for. All of the players were like, "Oh my god, we are all going to die." As you do realize we're only level 8, and always complaining about, don't you think this is a little bit too much for them? For us, I should say. But I will say, the encounter was probably the best encounter of the entire campaign. Like, for me, at least, that was like the high point of the campaign. Other circumstances and bits and pieces that occurred, the ending was a little less than what I would have liked, but this, for me, was the high point. And so I wanted to share basically how I went about building this creature, or what this creature is. So we're going to go through the stats. So essentially what I did is I just took the purple worm, the Hydra, and the beholder, and thought to myself, what do these things do? Okay, so purple worm has the ability to burrow, and it has its poison sting, as well as the acid that you get from being swallowed. A creature with multiple heads, in the way that the Hydra worked, probably not going to be as big, at least in this particular encounter. So it was just a huge monstrosity, but it had lots of smaller heads rather than one massive head. So I took the stinger from the Purple Worm. And that became a recharge ability, 5 and 6. Next, of course, there was the Hydra functionality, which is the multiple heads. It starts off with 5, and then, of course, as you lop them off, more heads will grow. Okay, fairly straightforward. So it has the multiple head, the same abilities that the Hydra has, the ability to swim, the ability to hold its breath, the fact that it can't be surprised because at least one of the heads is always awake, the ability to have multiple reactions because of the multiple heads, okay? The trickiest part was probably the Beholder part, but I think that was the part that was probably the most entertaining. Essentially, every head would count as an eye stalk, and so it only had, at the beginning at least, the 5 eye stalks. And so you would roll on the table. If you rolled above the number of heads, you would just roll again. If you rolled the same number again, you would roll again. The eye beams worked exactly the same as a standard Beholder, so it fired 3 eye rays at random targets. Eye rays were identical to what you get on a standard Beholder. However, I removed the first eye ray, which I believe was the Charm eye ray, because I didn't think it was all that special, and I replaced that with the anti-magic eye ray. So rather than having an anti-magic cone from its main central eye like a regular Beholder does, it just has a single eye beam that when it looks at a person, no magic can affect them and all their magical items become mundane until the start of the Beholder's next turn. Okay, so it isn't something that's going to happen frequently, but it can really mess up a player. So of course you've got the anti-magic ray, you've got the paralyzing ray, the fear ray, the slowing ray, the enervation ray, the telekinetic ray, the sleep ray, the petrification ray, the disintegration ray, and of course the death ray. The actions for the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder were it can have a multi-attack, which can make as many bite attacks as it has tail attacks, as it has heads, and 1 tail attack, or 1 eye ray attack and 1 stinger attack. So those were its options. It can either go num 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 num, or it can go pew 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 pew, and then it can also stab if the stinger is recharged. Okay, so let me just run you through this bad boy. So armor class was 19, fairly standard for that kind of thing. Hit points 200. Again, you can vary that depending. I ended up having to increase the number of hit points this creature had on the day because 7 players of level 8 versus this creature, their damage output would have made this thing just completely disappear in like 1 or 2 rounds. Walking speed, 30 feet. Swim speed, 60 feet. Burrowing speed, 30 feet. Initiative, +1. Has a strength of 20, a dexterity of 12, constitution of 20, intelligence of -4, so 2, wisdom of 10, and charisma of 7, so not all that good. +6 on its perception, dark vision for 60 feet, passive perception of 16, and it has a proficiency bonus of +4 and a challenge rating of 12. I don't really know that would work. Again, I dare say a challenge rating of 12 probably would be roughly where its challenge rating would be, but I haven't really had a chance to test it on any other groups, so anyone out there can let me know. Special abilities, it can hold its breath for an hour, as the Hydra can. The multiple heads, it has 5 heads, and while it has more than 1 head, it has advantage on saving throws, being blind, charmed, deafened, frightened, stunned, and being knocked unconscious. If it takes 25 hit points or more, one of the heads will fall off, and if all of its heads die, the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder dies. So same problems that a standard Beholder will have. It grows 2 more heads back at the end of its turn, provided that it hasn't taken fire damage. It also regenerates 10 hit points for every head that it regrows. Developing eye rays. This was the ability that I wrote in for the Beholder eye rays. The highest number that can be rolled on the iRay chart is limited to the number of heads that the Hydra has. Due to the odd number of heads, an Ice Stalks use a dice closest to the number of heads. So, for example, if it has 5, you use a d6. If it has 7, you roll a d8. If it has 9, you roll a d10, etc., etc. Once you get up to 10, you don't really need to worry about that. I had considered adding in additional iRays for when it gets above 10 heads, but it never really came into play, so I didn't really see that it was necessary. So the idea being is that once you hit 10 heads, you don't need to worry about adding the additional dice into play for the iRays, because 10 is the maximum number. You could potentially have 20, and then you're rolling a d20, but even then, if you roll above the iRays you're rolling against, there's no real point. So keeping it clear, 10 is the number that you max out at. The iRays are just a standard attack, whereas the Stinger is a recharge, as I said. So the Stinger attack is a recharge, similar to a breath weapon. It does the same damage as what a purple worm would do. 3d6 plus 9 piercing damage and 12d6 poison damage on a failed Constitution saving throw, half as much on a success. So the Sting is the real hurt when it comes to this creature. Also has a reach of 10 feet because it's on a extended appendage, as are all of the heads for all the nibbling. For the nibbling, of course, plus 8 to hit, plus 8 to hit, 10-foot range, 3d8 plus 5 piercing damage. Very, very basic. And the iRays are very much the same as a standard beholder. You pick 3 targets, roll a d whatever, depending on the number of iRays, apply that iRay to that character. The thing that also made this creature a lot more interesting was that it was ridden by a Death Knight, just to make things a little bit more chaotic. And so what I did with this particular Death Knight, because this creature that it's the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder was actually a creature that it summoned to be its mount in this particular encounter. And because it was specific to him, I actually gave the Death Knight the Mounted Combatant feat ability. Basically meaning that if someone is targeting the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder while the Death Knight is mounted, he can force the attacks to target him rather than the mount. This again gives the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder hell of a lot more defense in terms of hit points, because the players can't just force their attacks to attack the mount. However, it also adds a bit more of a dynamic to the fight, I should say, in that the player is going to try and dismount the knight, and that is possible. In fact, in the fight, it did happen. One of the players leapt at him and tackled him off the mount, and when that happened, of course, they were able to focus down the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder and bring it down just bring it down. I should say not under its control, no, just bringing it down. The drawback in this particular encounter was, of course, that because the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder had the fire vulnerability, the inability to regenerate its heads, I wasn't able to, or wasn't willing to, at least initially, to use the Death Knight's Doom Fireball thing, which is the fire and necrotic damage. So that didn't end up going off, but I think that just made the fight a lot more interesting. So yeah, I'm going to post the rules for this, a little photo download for the stat block. You'll be able to download that for yourselves and introduce that into your own adventures if you wish. Oh, I probably should mention, actually, because this wasn't really set in a lair, but what I did was I borrowed the encounter map from the crab battle for the what is it called? The White Plume Mountains. In the White Plume Mountains, there's an encounter where you go through an airlock into a giant bubble that has a chest in the middle of the room and a giant crab. And all around the bubble, or outside of the bubble, is basically steam that's being shot up, like water's pouring into this volcano. It's superheating and evaporating and just shooting up steam out of the area below, and everyone's sort of mounted on this platform surrounded by a bubble, protected by protected from the steam by the bubble. However, in this instance, in this particular encounter, and actually much like it is with the actual encounter, any ranged attack that would aimed at the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder, or indeed at the enemy play at the player characters, any ranged attack that missed would actually penetrate and poke a hole in the bubble, and jets of steam would shoot in from around the walls. So the idea behind the encounter was that they would find this out, that the Hydra was vulnerable and not regenerating due to the fire damage, the steam, of course, causing fire damage. So they would force it towards the walls, shoot the walls, cause the flames to, the steam to burn it, injure it, and then, of course, be able to take it down. So that was how the encounter was structured. So the idea was to introduce this massive monster with this absolutely ridiculous encounter, realistically, but always the best. And then have a boss room where they were trapped in this area, but the boss room is actually designed to allow them to defeat the boss. And that's how it went. They ended up defeating the Purple Worm Hydra Beholder and the Death Knight, and then they got shot out of the top of the volcano and landed in the woods just outside of the vampires. The vampires' castle, and went on to victory a couple of sessions later. So, as I said before, I'll post links down below for all of the relevant stuff when it becomes available. And so if you're watching this early, the links might not be down there, but if you're watching this after the fact, the links will be down there. So, timey-wimey, annoying bullshit. Okie dokie. Anyway, just wanted to talk about that, because it was a monster that I was really happy of, a monster that I was really happy with when I designed it, and one that the players actually really seemed to enjoy, and so I just wanted to share. All right, so until next time, this has been the Random Thoughts of a DM, and remember to keep on blending. Bye!